There are three types of rules that is affecting Nigeria right now. Three types of rules responsible for the state that Nigeria is in right now. And we chose at least one of each of these three types of rules. I'm going to mention them, but I need you to think about what I'm going to say now and tell me what your take is. These three types of rules is the reason why we have so much corruption in Nigeria. Three types. Rule of law, rule by law, and then rule of talk. Rule of law, rule by law, and rule of talk. Rule of law, this one is clear to all of us. This is where everybody is supposed to be under the law. Nobody should be above the law, whether government officials or citizens. Everybody should be equal and below the law. Now, this is ideal. This is what happens elsewhere in civilized society. In developed countries, they have rule of law. Do we have rule of law in Nigeria? Our government officials, our security agencies, do they respect the rule of law? I leave you to answer that. But here is the kicker. For me, from where I stand, instead of the rule of law, what we have by our government and elected officials is rule by law. You see, we say that rule of law in Nigeria is dead, and you'll be right to say so. But while we say that the rule of law is dead, they are ruling by law. There is rule of law. What is rule of law? When the police scans the internet and sees opposition voices criticizing the government of the day, and the security agency, particularly the Nigerian police, now goes to begin to look for law that they can use to silence those opposition voices. Now that is the rule of law. They do so. And it's not just the police. You have the EFCC. When the EFCC scans the internet and they see people spraying money, and then they begin to look for law to use to silence those opposition voices, that is rule by law. Because when it is somebody that favors the people in government, they don't apply it. But when it is somebody that is an opposition voice, then they apply it. So they rule by law. There is no rule of law. Now this is dangerous, but here is what is even more dangerous. The rule of talk. For the rest of us Nigerians, we believe that once the first set of rule, which is the rule of law, is disrespected and disregarded, when the president disregards the rule of law by holding on, using the rule by law to Nnamdi Kanu, for instance, what we then do is apply the rule of talk. I don't know if you understand it. So, the government of the day, or the government officials, or some powerful security agency officials, instead of applying or respecting the rule of law, they decide to rule by law. And we, as Nigerians, we react by using the rule of talk. Why is the rule of talk very dangerous? Two reasons I would say very quickly. Number one, the rule of talk is dangerous because it reinforces the rule of law. The rule by law. It reinforces it. It allows the rule by law to continue and allows the disrespect for the rule of law to continue. There are number 2 reasons why the rule of talk is dangerous. It does not allow us to hold these elected officials accountable. They disrespect the rule of law and they choose rather to use the rule by law, and rather than hold them accountable, we choose to do the rule of talk. And the rule of talk is very, very short-handed. It lasts maybe 1 week. We have a David Umahi who comes on national TV and openly confessed with his mouth that he disregarded the rule of law. He openly stated with his own mouth that he chose to use rule by law. And then we as Nigerians, we are excited by using the rule of talk. We are talking. We make jest of him, we make caricature of him, and then we are happy and satisfied that we have used rule of talk. And we mistake rule of talk for holding government officials accountable. Are they the same thing? They are not. Now, David Umahi, in his open confession on national TV, should be held accountable for his actions. And how do you hold him accountable? You look for which law he broke. Which law did David Umahi break in his open confession on Arise TV, particularly with that cost per kilometer question from Rufai of Arise News? What law did David Umahi break? Now, once we now identify that law, we now take action. We make a mistake sometimes when we think that the rule of law can only be enforced by talking, by using the rule of talk. We make that mistake. And we think that these elected officials will always get away with their rule of talk, or rule by law, even if we try to hold them accountable the right way. How do we hold them accountable the right way? How? For David Umahi as an example, we must now write petitions. Don't say petitions don't work. They work. The government officials, the ruling elites, what they do with the rule by law is to use petitions against us. When the police decides to arrest very dark man, for instance, or a sea king, for instance, or these other guys, what they are doing is they are using rule by law. They are using petitions to suppress opposition voices. What stops us from using those petitions to hold them accountable? Holding accountable is not just coming to social media and talking. In fact, the right way to use rule of talk is after you have used petition, after you have used the order of mandamus, after you have done all those things that the rule of law requires you to do to hold leaders accountable, you now go to media and start talking about it. There's Freedom of Information Act that gives every single citizen of Nigeria the power to request any information except those that are for national security purposes. We are not using it to get those information. This is where, for me, I blame Nigerian media. The Nigerian media, particularly the mainstream ones, particularly the legacy ones. There is a lot of power in the Freedom of Information Act that they are not using. Instead of helping us to enforce the rule of law, they are helping to push the rule by law. Yes. And they are doing so by tremendously encouraging the rule of talk. Talk. Plenty talk, they say, not the full basket. For one action One action is better than a million talk. We must back our talk with action. Look at the Electoral Act 2022. We are asking for electoral reforms. And we have people who are pushing already for electoral reforms. Not many of the powerful people though. But here is where the problem is. We are at the stage of petition. That is rule of talk. We have drafted an amendment act. Go and check. If you look at the Cyber Crimes Act of 2015, it has been amended in 2024. And it was amended without even being made public. Not so many Nigerians know about it. The same way that 2015 Cyber Crimes Act was amended using the 2024 Cyber Crimes Amendment Act, that same way we can amend the 2022 Electoral Act with a 2025 Electoral Amendment Act. So what does this involve? It involves we choosing the kind of amendment that we want. Where I have a problem with the approach of petition is this. You tell them, amend Electoral Act. Amend Electoral Act. Now we hear that INEC has sent request for the amendment of the Electoral Act to the National Assembly, and they did not put mandatory electronic transmission of results in there. They didn't. So if after the 30 days protest, which ends June 6, right, that you have given for the petition, the National Assembly now says, okay, yes, we have started the process of amending the Electoral Act. And then they begin to drag their feet until December. And then before you know it, December will now start doing rule of talk again. What do you think will happen? By January of 2026, it's already getting too late. Can't do anything anymore. What can we do to shorten it? What can we do to move out of the rule of talk and get into rule of law? Practical. We are citizens. We have the power to choose the kind of amendment we want for our Electoral Act. And we have done it. A few of us got together and we drafted it. Now, the drafts are available in the link in the description. Click it, download it. And what you need to do is very simple. We are also going to try as much as possible in a subsequent video to get a list of the contacts of the National Assembly members, the ones we can lay our hands on. Send it to them as WhatsApp messages. We need action. And then, very importantly, the way you check if your lawmakers are interested in the rule of law and not rule by law is if they support this Electoral Amendment Act. If a lawmaker does not support the Electoral Amendment Act, if Akpabio does not support it, if Tajuddin Abbas does not support it, tell me, what is the moral justification for you supporting them to come back? What is it? So Nigerians must now use this Electoral Amendment Act as a yardstick for measuring and gauging if their elected officials respect the rule of law. Yes, and if they don't, act accordingly. Nigeria can be saved. It's not so difficult. It's just that we have not found the right medicine yet. But we have, and we will start talking about it. And it is called Project Eagle. It's the right medicine for Nigeria. Look, when somebody has HIV and the person is taking all manner of medication, it appears as though it is impossible to treat. But when you get the right antiviral drugs, what happens? You are able to manage it. That is how it is with Nigeria. It is not so difficult to fix Nigeria. All we just need is the right solution, the right holistic approach, not approaches that are in silos, approaches that are individual. Everybody is looking at it from my end. Somebody sent me a message and said, oh, I hope you are working with Randy Peters who we don't want you to break our ranks. Come on, what kind of thinking is that? Is this about personal or self or individual aggrandizement? No, this is not about Randy Peters. It's about Nigeria. So if Randy Peters has done a protest letter, yes, a petition to the National Assembly and says, oh, we want electoral reforms. And I have taken a further step to say, okay, fine, these are the electoral reforms that we need. So when we go to the National Assembly, this is what we give to them. Not just talking to them to say, give us electoral reform. We tell them, give us this electoral reform. How does that clash? But when you see people think about their own self-aggrandizement, oh, Randy Peters is getting traction. Oh, Randy Peters is trending online. So don't come and talk about Electoral Amendment B so that you don't break the ranks, the traction of Randy Peters. That is rule of talk. That is rule of talk. I am not interested in rule of talk. I want a Nigeria that works. And if you have been watching, you know everything I do on this channel is about that. We need the rule of law to be respected. And the only way to do it is to get out of that rule of talk the way we are operating it right now and do it rightly, which is after the rule of action. We're taking action. Next, watch out for Project Eagle. It is the game changer.